This is an exciting time of the year for our high school seniors. It's a time in which they are experiencing senioritis. It's something that there is no vaccine for. It's something that they're feeling, and it spreads throughout the senior class. Their teachers are trying to cram 3.5 months worth of material into the last 2 weeks. The remaining days of their high school career are waning. And then it's summer. And the promise of this summer keeps on getting better. And things around the world keep on changing. The outlook for the summer keeps on improving. And pretty soon these seniors are going to head off to college, to what we call college life. On move-in day, thousands of 18-year-olds will descend on college campuses and move in their belongings and make their room within the campus themselves. Family members and friends are going to help them do that, to move clothing, backpacks, books, computers, all kinds of things into a very small dormitory room. My university decided to do that all on one day, in which they declared freshman move-in day, and thousands of us decided that we were converging on the campus at once. The hallways were filled, the elevators were packed, parking lots were a mess. And having arrived in the morning, I was able to get my stuff into the room and enjoy some lunch in the cafeteria, an experience I never had before, to eat in a college cafeteria. And I came outside, and I was walking by the parking garage, and somebody said, "Hey, I need a hand unloading my stuff. Can you help me?" I said, "Sure." He introduced himself as Kyle, and I asked where he was from. He said, "Oh, just from around here." And we helped unload things from his Volkswagen Vanagon. It was packed. And after several trips up and down the stairs and getting everything into the room, we both were pretty sweaty and were moving his bed into place, the one last thing, and my back was turned to the doorway. But I heard this voice, "Kyle, you got everything under control here?" And I knew that voice. I turned around, and standing in the doorway was Clint Eastwood. In my head, I heard the wah, wah, wah. And I looked at Kyle and I go, You're Kyle Eastwood? And he goes, "Yeah." And then Clint goes, because we were on first name basis by then, Clint goes, "We got this handled." And so I left. Now, although I saw Kyle on campus just a couple of different times, I can't say that I know him. And I definitely can't say that I know Clint Eastwood. I'm almost certain that neither one of them remember anything about me or about that move-in day. In the same way, though, I don't think that father and son know each other completely. I don't even know my own father completely. As time goes on, I learn more and more things. Each of you are familiar with family members and friends that you spend time with, but the reality is you really don't know everything about one another. The writer of John, on the other hand, tells us, though, that Jesus knows God, the Father, intimately because they are one. Theirs is not a relationship that occurs in a moment and is forgotten, but it's a relationship that continues to grow and reveal itself to us mortals. Throughout the Gospel of John, Jesus claims the name of God that has been given in the Hebrew Scriptures. He claims it for himself. If you remember from the book of Exodus, Moses encounters the burning bush. And God tells him to go and bring the Israelites out of Egypt. And Moses says to God, "But if I go, "Who shall I tell them sent me?" And God says, "The God of your ancestors has sent me to you." And God says, "I am who I am." Jesus claims the holy name of God when he's speaking of himself. "I am the bread of life," John 6:35. "I am the light of the world," 8:12. "I am the true vine," 15:1. The Gospel of John is emphasizing the relationship of Jesus to God, the great I am. It is this relationship between Jesus the Son and God the Creator that was the emphasis of the First Ecumenical Council in Nicaea in the year 325. That council was called together by the Emperor Constantine, who he as himself was a catechumen, meaning that he was being prepared for baptism and confirmation. Imagine having Constantine in your confirmation class. Now, the purpose of that council was to resolve disputes that were happening in the church over the relationship of God, the Creator, to Jesus, the Son. And in that relationship, Jesus demonstrates his firsthand knowledge of God's nature and purpose. Our passage for today from John concludes the passage of the last meal in the Gospel of John, the last meal that Jesus has together with his disciples. As they finish their time together, Jesus pauses and he takes time to pray with his disciples. He offers this intercessory prayer, and in that prayer, Jesus is instructing them again how to pray. In Jesus' divine relationship, he receives knowledge directly from the source of all knowledge, and he is now passing that along to his disciples. In his divinity, he has firsthand knowledge of God's nature and purpose. And in his humanity, Jesus is now conveying that knowledge to other human beings. Jesus prays for providential care over his disciples. That word providence, it's comprised of two parts, pro meaning before, and there's a Latin root in there called videre, which means to see. So in this prayer, Jesus is asking God to look out for his followers, to watch over, to look out for those whom he loves. He prays that God would care for the disciples in the same way that God has lovingly cared for him. Jesus also prays for our sanctification or our holiness. He prays that we might be set apart in the world in order to do the ministry that God has set before us. Jesus prays that his followers would be sanctified, to be made holy, to be set apart, that they might bring the good news to the world. The prayer signals a transition in which the responsibility for God's mission in the world is passing from Jesus to the disciples. How many of you would consider yourselves responsible? Not that many? Would you consider yourself responsible? I remember the first time that I really understood what responsibility meant. As a teenager and later in life, I was a camp counselor. And in that role, I thought I knew responsibility. Each week, a new set of scouts would come up to camp, and as counselors, we were responsible for their care throughout the week. A few years later, I became the waterfront director, and a new set of responsibilities came into play. We worked hard to maintain a safe place to swim and boat. and we practiced drills in case there was an emergency. Now, a few years later, I became a scoutmaster, and I arrived at a school parking lot early. And soon families began to arrive, and kids started to get out of the vehicles. And it hit me. These parents were entrusting me with the one thing that was the most precious thing in their life. Responsibility was on my shoulders. That was a very different sense of responsibility. I'll let you know we had a great week at camp. Now we find ourselves back in the parking lot. And God is entrusting us with something so precious. God's mission in the world. To go and spread the good news that God has shared with us. But we don't bear that responsibility alone. We hold that responsibility in community, and we share in the work that God has with our neighbors and our friends and all those that we meet in this world. And God promises to be in the midst of our community, to be present in ministry and care throughout this world. The presence of God is seen and witnessed in our community. In our passage, we once again hear that we are called to go out into the world, yet we are not to be of the world. Jesus calls us to be in solidarity with the poor and the marginalized of this world, while at the same time denouncing the root causes that cause hunger, poverty, and injustice in this world. We are called to assist those who are hungry, while at the same time, we are called to recognize unjust practices that keep people from putting food on their table. We are called to assist the poor, while also speaking against policies that keep people from earning a living wage. We're called to house the homeless, while still revealing practices that are keeping people from having their own home. To be in the world, we are called to be in solidarity with the poor and the marginalized. Jesus demonstrates this by feeding the hungry. He demonstrates this by healing the outcast. He demonstrates this by being with the poor. But we are also called to be not of this world, to recognize the root causes of unjust structures and broken relationships that themselves cause hunger, poverty, and injustice. Jesus loved the poor and the marginalized, and in return, they loved him back. Jesus also denounced unjust structures and inequities of this world. And in return, they crucified him. Throughout his life and his ministry, Jesus models for us how we are to be in the world, but not of the world. We do this not absent of Christ, but alongside Christ. We hear in verse 6 and 14 that Jesus says, we have been given God's word. In verse 18, Jesus says, as you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. Verse 14 and 16, Jesus says, just as he did not belong to the world, we do not belong to the world. Yet Jesus asks that we are not taken out of this world, not taken out from the difficulties and the hardships, but that we would be strengthened to be sent into the world so that we can bring God's good news and God's justice into the world. It's for this work that Jesus asks that we would be sanctified, to be made holy, to be set apart to do God's work in the world. We're set apart with Christ. And as we engage in what God has set before us, we get a taste of that full and abundant life that Christ has to offer. Serving beside Christ, we begin to see life in all of its fullness and its blessings. Recognizing Christ, praying for our unity. Jesus asked that God would protect us and asked that we would be one as we are one. As we relate to one another and we serve in God's name, Christ is revealed, and we get to know Jesus just a little bit better. And as we get to know Christ better, we also begin to see his relationship with God, which in turn informs our relationship with others and with Christ. And as we do that, we get a glimpse of the abundant and eternal life that God has promised each one of us. As I was preparing for today, I was reading one commentary, and a writer encouraged us to think of a person that returns from vacation. Maybe the soft glow of a suntan hints a relaxing time near the beach where the person was able to get some good rest and revitalized for the weeks to come. And maybe as you're talking to them, they say, "Oh, I wish the vacation lasted forever." The writer encourages us. Perhaps our Bible passage offers something more enduring than a good vacation. Perhaps the Bible passage offers us a sense of Christ's presence that allows us to live vitally and faithfully in this world, not owned by it, but fully engaged by the truth of God's word, by the truth who is sent into the world, that we may all have a more abundant life here and now. May it be so. Amen.